That was so perfect.
Hey, Sean here from SpeedCubeReview.com. I had the great opportunity of sitting down with Jabari Nuruddin and interviewing him. If you are newer to the community, that name might not ring a bell, but if you've been in the community for a while, he was pretty much a household name about 5 years ago, and I'm so grateful to have talked to him. Such amazing advice for everyone. Sit down, watch this, or even just listen to this interview. He was really known in the community for just memorizing all of ZBLL and using it well. So I'm going to let him introduce himself and get right into this interview.
Just to give a sort of intro to myself, I was born in New York. I lived there until I was 5. I then moved to London. Then I moved to New Jersey. Then I moved to Hong Kong. Then I moved to Indonesia. Then I moved to South Africa, which is where I started cubing. I actually won the first competition I went to with a 17 average, so it wasn't amazing, but that was one of the highlights of my life, and that's when I got addicted. And then after that, I came to the U.S. for college.
And you said, so were you in South Africa then? Because that's where
Yeah.
all like the first few competitions were, right?
Yes, that's where I lived. I lived in South Africa, in Johannesburg. Shout out to my boys from South Africa. We had a great time. I used to win every event back then. Back before I came to the U.S., I was no longer the big fish in the small pond, but I have won some competitions in the U.S. I remember when I beat Keaton in competition and won the whole thing. He was not happy that day. Keaton, he loves to win. But no, it's all love. It's all love. And I really appreciated the chance to start out in a smaller place with a more local scene and then
Mhm.
transition into a more, because if you come to America, you're going to meet Cubans from all across the country and from other states and stuff. But it was really cool to start out in a smaller place and watch a community bloom with you.
That's, yeah, what was the cubing scene like there then?
There was none. When I started cubing in South Africa, there were no competitions at all for like the first year or half a year or so. And then Donovan Pete, I can't remember his last name, but a man named Donovan, along with some other guys, organized the first competition. They just
Hmm.
invited everyone. It was this little tiny room in some small backwater, somewhere in Johannesburg, South Africa. We all met up and we had a great time. And then
Okay.
after that, they kept organizing more competitions until there were 4, 5, 6, 7 a year, and we just had a lot of fun cubing.
Yeah, I've got the page pulled up. I think Donovan Hale, Hale.
Yes. Oh my God. It has been years since I've spoken to Donovan, but I owe that man everything because I started cubing because I started really taking it seriously because I was like, I'm about to go to a competition. I want to do
Hmm.
well. I didn't think I was going to win. I wasn't the fastest person there, but I just got lucky with some ZBLLs on the last average and I came out with the win by 5 seconds or so almost.
Well, I was gonna ask some other things, but let's jump into some ZBL conversations because
Sure.
that's the
Absolutely.
big thing.
That's
I
that's
that
what that's what put me on the map.
Yeah. So, well, first off, there weren't a lot of things that you looked up. You figured out on your own with Cube Explorer.
Yes. Back then there was only BocaB.pl, which was like this disorganized version of AlgDB. And
Hmm.
I had to generate Algs for myself because back then we didn't like my list is still one of the best. It's not the best. I would say Juju's list right now is the best list if you're looking to learn. But back then there were no collections of just organized, personally selected lists. So I had to generate a lot of my Algs. And also I found some certain algorithms that were faster, difficult to learn. And I decided let me learn some easier to learn algs and I can fix them later. Because one thing I found, and I'll give this advice to any new cuber, never stop learning. Because if you keep your head in a state of there's more I can be doing, there's ways for me to get better. If you're constantly in a state of learning, your brain is primed algorithmically, like in the actual neurons, to collect new data. And so for me, the minute I finished OLL, I went right into COLL. The minute I finished COLL, went into ZBLL. When I finished ZBLL, the same day that I announced I finished ZBLL, I had finished learning Sarah's Advanced. And it was because I was in this mindset of there's always more I can be collecting as a person. I have a little group of friends. I call us the walking college ad. And that is to represent the idea of constantly be advertising the need for education in all things.
That's fantastic. I now not plugging myself because I am nowhere near that, but like the first time I had a sub 10 solve, I kind of got in this mindset of not that I can't get faster, but that I'm happy with it. And so that's where I started learning ZZ and then Rue. And now I'm just doing a lot more Rue.
What method do you
Got
use?
What's that?
What is your primary method?
So, like, if I'm doing competition, like I did some solves this morning, and I did CFOP, OLL, PLL. I was learning some COLLs, and then I kind of paused for a little bit with that. But I've been doing Rue for the past 4 or 5, maybe 6, 7 months now, just for the sake of actually diving into it and getting to
And
know it.
I would say that's a great idea, actually. I learning Rue taught me a lot about edge orientation on a different scale because last six edges is a very different way of thinking about orientation than the standard CFOP orientation. And learning new
Mhm.
methods is a great way to expand your perspective on the cube because you don't realize how little you know. It's Jadanowski's window. There are known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and then there are unknown unknowns, the things that you don't even know you're missing.
I need to. I've heard that before. What was the name of the what window?
I'm probably pronouncing it wrong, but it is meant Jadanowski, I believe. Jadanowski, something like that. It's a philosophical idea. I love philosophy.
Yeah, I'll throw the text up so that way
Yo, I can
it'll
correct it.
officially be there.
I'm gonna look like an idiot because I said it all wrong. I probably said Jadanowski, and it's like Jurder, something completely different. I love that.
I'll put in my voice over yours of the
Yep,
pronunciation if it's way off.
Jadanowski. Yeah,
So what year was it that you finished ZBLO?
So this would have been about 2017, a little bit after I was sub 10. Actually, no, it was before I was sub 10. I remember this because I wasn't quite sub 10 yet. So this would have been not 2017. I'm thinking way too recently. This would have been in like 2013.
Yeah, because
Yeah,
in 2015, I watched a video of your 6.46 second solve.
I remember that one. That was a big one.
That, well, watching it, like, it seemed very slow and methodical. And then it was, I mean, there was a PLL skip, but what, like, was there something specific about that, or was it just happened to be a
No,
PLL skip, a
it just
good solve?
it was a good solve where I did the slow and methodical after a while because it was in comp and I couldn't spam TPS because I was still getting nervous back then. I got a PL skip, but the thing that made it so it looked so smooth was I predicted my AUF. Because if you know your AUF when you have a PL skip, you're basically just doing one look less layer. Which
Hmm.
if you want to get into that, I'm still learning one look less layer. Which if you've heard of the subset is basically OLL and PLL all together in one step. There are over 4,000 algorithms. I plan to eventually learn it, but I'm an adult now, so I don't have the same 20. I used to practice 10 hours a day, literally, for
Hmm.
years at a time.
So how far are you right now?
I'm probably about a third, probably somewhere like, and it could be like plus minus hundreds of algs. I can't estimate because they're
Hmm.
not stored in dichotomies. They're not stored like I know this one, I know this one. It's
Yeah.
this one I know three algs for, and I kind of like this alg. This one I know half an hour, like I kind of can do it, but I need to sit there and think about it for a minute. So it's just a process of constantly making sure I'm getting better at something. And with the foresight that I love QB so much, I'll never quit permanently. So
Hmm.
eventually, if I keep learning, I'll get there. And if I do that, I'll do something that's never been done. Because I wasn't the first person to learn all of ZBLO. I was the first person, I say, to make ZBLO work. And I take great pride that I showed people if you just put the time in, you can make ZBLO work and get basically PLL skips on like half your solves if you're willing to orient edges.
Yeah. The couple times I've done either like a last layer algorithm, or I mean it's not that often, and my cat's now joining me. It's not that often, but the times that, like, it feels good.
It's a sort of high. It's like when you're doing taking a college test and you get the exact question you studied for, and you're like, oh, I got this one.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. I studied for this case. I know it like the back of my hand. I did it. You know, in my official 7.646 average, I got one of the most common ZBLLs with a good AUF on the last solve, and I just blew myself out of the water because I'd been aiming for sub 8 for years. So
Hmm.
about two comps before, I got a sub 8 average, like 792, and I was just satisfied. I had finally reached my goal, sub 8, and a few comps later, I get a 7.46 average. I'm ranked 15th in the world. I never even had dreamed of that, and I have ZBLL to thank.
When I learn algorithms, so CMLL, that was one thing when I decided, because I actually took a few years not learning so much new stuff. I was learning a lot of FMC techniques and things like that. More, I would say, concepts than algorithms. But when I decided to just learn full CMLL, I ended up learning it in one day because it was just a lot of it. I was like, well, I know this algorithm. Oh, that one's just like that.
And it's a
And
combo. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
yeah,
to interrupt you.
and no, that's fine. And one thing that when I learn algorithms is I'll take one algorithm. I say, okay, well, this does this. What if I do it on the inverse? Okay, now I've got that. What if I mirror it this way? And I don't Like I just sort of take one algorithm and manipulate it as many times as I can. Is
Exactly.
that what you do, or what do you
I
do
do
when you
that to
learn?
an extreme degree. I'll manipulate the
Mhm.
same algorithm 200 ways and find maybe from that four or five that are worth remembering. And from that, so do you know Gianfranco Juanque, the blind solver? I'm sure you do.
I might. I probably
He's the
do.
one
I've
with
just
the brother who
names.
does Megaminx, the brother who does Megaminx
Okay. Hmm.
on Pablo. And so
Yeah.
when me and him sat down and talks Algs, it's like talking with another type of human. The way that he understands the Rubik's cube is down to such a deep level. He dreams in algorithms. I'm not at that level yet, but he told me he saw it in a dream, the perfect alg for this case. And I've been in close to that with mathematics. I've dreamed in numbers before because I've sat there and done some matrix mathematics in my mind enough that I can sit down and think about numbers, just
Hmm.
without subconsciously. And if you sit there and explore the Rubik's Cube with your fingers, trying new different things, trying out different combos, try switching a U for a U prime and see how that cycles the other four pieces, doing stuff like that. And then when you do sit down to learn an alg, you'll be like, wait, this is just this alg with these two numbers switched and a little bit of an insert. And you're building your base. It's like with mathematics. The first thing you learn is how to do addition and subtraction and how to
Hmm.
count and stuff like that. And then once you get to calculus, once you get to discrete mathematics, you add it all together into like this great big pie, and you just get to enjoy the overall taste of the solve, appreciating that you had to master each ingredient.
Yeah. I that. I mean, I'm nowhere near like the extreme degree that you are, but there's so many things that reminded me of. I mean, even there was a day with F2L. Sorry, this isn't even an interview now. It's just telling stories. There was
Oh,
a
this is people are gonna love this. They're gonna love a conversation between two people who have known each other but haven't gotten the chance to really meet. I think it's an enjoyable piece of content.
yeah. When I was learning or working on F2L, there was a moment. This was really early on in cubing. I just stopped doing solves and I just sat down for it was a good maybe 3 straight hours. I did no solve and I just took an edge out, figured out how I could insert it a different way, tried it a different way, took an edge out, inserted a different way. There was even just one thing recently. So there's a new database for algorithms that came out called SpeedCube
BQDB.
DB. Yeah.
Did you know? Just to interrupt, I made AlgDB. The current site,
Oh.
I made it from scratch, except for a little bit of code. And so to have BQD to commit me, I wish I could finish it. I no longer work for the cubicle as a programmer, so I don't
Hmm.
have the time to dedicate to make competing with them. But I'll just say this: every single idea they had, I had it first.
I'm gonna stay completely silent on all of this.
Yes, yes,
Um,
yes. But no, no, please do talk. I'm not soft about it. I really do appreciate
yeah,
the competition because I think competition in environments where we're doing it for fun is a fantastic thing. There's a reason I
yeah,
compete.
yeah. And I was looking at because I really don't like ever thinking of F2L as algorithms. There's a couple odd ones, but it's always just to
But
me
you,
that's
I was just gonna say you can learn an algorithm intuitively. You look at the algs
mhm,
and understand it the way insertions work, which if you've done FMC, you probably understand fairly well. It's
mhm.
intuitive algorithms, and you can do that with anything.
Yeah, and there was something that I know I knew before, but I was going through and just trying to going through all the algorithms for F2L and just say, okay, yeah, do that, just clicking on putting them in sort of like my sheet. And there was one that was just basically a wide insertion, reinsert the cross edge, and it made so much sense because I've been doing Rue now that I'm like, now it's just sort of an intuitive thing. Once I saw that, it's just
And not
insert,
just that,
reinsert that.
but if you continue to explore that, you can manipulate it further to start to do multi-slotting stuff. Like if you watch Jaden McNeil's videos, they're some of the most
Hmm.
fantastic tutorials in my opinion, because he's really exploring CFOP from a scientific point of view of like what is possible with this method. And some of the stuff he does is so like, why didn't I think of that? But it's also like, how did he think of that? You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And by exploring your method to the limit, it's like as Alan Watts said, um, any human thought should be taken to its limit. The moment you have an idea, continue to explore it, and you'll come to somewhere new, and it's usually beautiful.
That's yeah. I haven't. I've watched a few of Jaden McNeil's things. I plan to once I'm either going to end Rue and then go explore something else, or keep exploring that further and do like there's a I think it's like Pinkie Pie or something where it's literally CMLL plus EOLR at the same time. It's a big series of Algs, but it could lower the move count to averaging like low 40s even. Which my big thing is I always want to get that low move count.
Yes, for me, it's not about. It's all about the times and about doing something cool. I don't
Yeah.
really because like I'm not world class anymore. Even if I got a ridiculously good average in comp, it would be like 6.7, 6.8. So I
Hmm.
wouldn't be like world class. But I do know that if I got a good average, people would be like, "How did he do that? What did he just do there?" I want to surprise you with my solves. It's like MF Doom, the rapper, and I love to quote people. He said, "I'm always trying to surprise them. I want people to see my solve and think." He's doing something different. He's not using the
Hmm.
same method. I call my method Barry, which is my nickname, and it's the idea is I'm just using any type of possibilities I can. It's mostly CFOP because that's what I default to because that's where I started. But I do a lot of different tricks. I try and mess around, and I come to a place where I'm doing a solve that isn't necessarily CFOP, obviously, because I'm skipping PLL a lot of the time, or I'm
Hmm.
skipping OLL a lot of the time, or I'm multi-slotting, or I'm setting up it's more like Petrus where I'm doing a block first and then F2L, and just experimenting with the cube. Because if you didn't know, a Rubik's Cube is a four-dimensional matrix that can only be expressed in three integers using very complicated mathematics. I've actually programmed the solver. I'm in the process of working on a big project. It's a secret. It's called RAPS, so I won't let anything else slip. I'm a bit of a procrastinator, so don't expect anything soon. But I'm working on something very cool.
So, okay, I've got to write down a few things to bring up. So, first off, can you explain the four-dimensional part of it?
Okay, so in Cosiemba's solver, Cube Explorer, the simplest way
Hmm.
he expresses it is corner orientation, corner permutation, edge permutation, and edge orientation. Those four numbers. You can simplify the Rubik's Cube down to three digits using piece position, piece orientation, and parity. And it's the
Hmm.
same amount of space in terms of the mathematical space. It actually does reduce it by two, but uh, what that does is it means that we're dealing with a three-dimensional object that a computer sees in four dimensions. From that, you're basically doing matrix mathematics, which is a field of math I am not educated on. I don't claim to. There is someone I believe, Kangaroo. He studies this at college. Who I would love to talk to. It's just we're all so busy, and I've disconnected from the community, so I have to reintroduce myself to everybody. But it's so fascinating when you understand the mathematics of the Rubik's cube, and it's a really beautiful puzzle. Like it is so simple, but it's so
Hmm.
complicated at the exact same time.
Where'd the nickname Barry come from?
Oh, this is a long story and a short one at the same time.
Okay.
My name is Jabari, and as a child, my parents called me Barry. I'm sorry, Bari, not
Hmm.
Barry. And so my whole family they call me Bari as like a pet name, and my friends and I used to call me Bojangles because my boss at the cubicle, James, couldn't say my name, and so he would just keep coming up with more and more ridiculous names until he came up with Bojangles, and that one made no sense. And from there, me, Chris, and Mike McNeil, my friends, Chris Tran, I'm sure many know him,
Hmm.
we just started coming up with nicknames for each other all the time. We call each other John, Jerry. So then they started getting closer to my name. So they started calling me Jerry. And then they called me Barry. And I was like, wait, that kind of sounds like Barry. I like Barry. And then I started rapping. And when I started rapping, I needed a name, but I couldn't just call myself Barry because that's
Hmm.
taken. So I said Barry the Binary. It rhymes. And from there, it stuck. Once you choose a rap name, you can't, I mean, you can change it, but for me, I wouldn't want to because I love my rap name. And so from that, I go by Barry.
I don't have a rap name. I DJ'd for a while because I got sick of seeing bad DJs. I got so
Oh,
tired of it, and I'm like, I'm doing this now. And then I burned myself out because I didn't want to build a company, and it got big. And everyone's like, you need a DJ name, and like there were some ideas I had, but I knew that once I had a DJ name, it would be stuck. I'd have that, and so I didn't make one at
so your
all.
name is No Name. I am unknown.
I'm
Please welcome to
sure
the
that's
stage.
taken.
Please, oh, of course, there's No Name the rapper. But please welcome to the stage, Mr. Wait, what was your name again?
That'll work. I'll do that. If I start DJing again, I'll do that.
Exactly, exactly. Just have them always say, don't tell them that you don't have a name and see how long it takes for them to actually admit, wait a second, I don't even know what to call you.
That works. So you've done Rue then. It sounds you mentioned something
Yeah,
about that.
I learned it a long time ago because it's fairly simple from the
Hmm.
perspective of a CFOP solver. You just build one block, ignore certain edges, build another side of the F2L, Then you do CMLL, which is easy for me because I know COLL and ZBLL. And I do know some CMLLs because I actually sat through and genned all of the CMLLs with Kian Mansour over a video call one day. And the only thing I suck at is last six edges because it's entirely intuitive. And I'm an
Hmm.
algorithmic thinker. So intuitive stuff means I have to practice. And to practice means I need to dedicate time. To dedicate time means I have to decide that Ru is worth my time. To decide Ru is worth my time, I have to give up on CFOP. And it's a long story because to give up on CFOP means I have to give up on one class layer. And that's the dream.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, it's probably because I was gonna say I was with. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's called Pinkie Pie. That then you're just left with four edges, which is a few
Nothing.
moves
I
usually.
might
Yeah.
I might learn it eventually. So I have okay, I'll say this. I believe my soul is immortal. And that doesn't come from a religious place. I just
Hmm.
mathematically nothing can come from nothing. Your soul was not born of your parents because when you were born your brain couldn't even form memories. So there was a point at your life in which your consciousness was born. And consciousnesses in my opinion never go away. They just go somewhere else. So I hope wherever I go there's a Rubik's cube with me so I can play with
One can
my
hope.
Rubik's cube. I can play with my Rubik's cube in heaven.
I'm sure at some point you'll have a mental version though that you can just
Oh,
solve and scramble.
that is involved in the project that I'm working on. But again,
I don't know who it was. I saw a picture of them doing FMC. They didn't have any cubes. They ended up DNFing it. But have you tried then solve like I don't know, taking a scramble and seeing if you can like follow the whole solve mentally?
no. Do you remember speed solves like blind back when people used to do speed and blind solves before BLD like became so fast? Lucas Garin is
It
actually
might have
really
been
good at
right
them.
around the time I was starting.
Yeah, so back then people used to memorize an entire CFOP solve and then just do it. And like
Mhm.
if you see Rami Sabai, I don't know how to say if that's how you say his name, Sabi.
Spahi, I think it is.
Rami
I'm still
Sabai.
probably pronouncing it wrong.
You know,
But I was at a comp and I called him Raimi, and I was like, oh man, that's never going away now.
I remember back in the days when Rami was the kid on the scene killing two by two. Shout out to Rami. But uh, he did some speed solves where I think he still owns a YouTube UWR. And unless someone's beat him in all the years since I've disappeared. But people would memorize an entire solve. And so basically they're doing what you said, mapping it out. I can go pretty far. I can do full F2L without looking at the cube. It would just take me a long time. But
Mhm.
I cannot predict my last layer. So I can do a two look solve because I'll if I get to OLL, I can always predict my PLL using some basic techniques like RLL and RCLL, which I don't even know if J even does, but corner prediction plus edge prediction. It's fairly simple
Yeah.
compared to some other stuff. I would rate that at like a 4 on the hard scale to do intuitively.
Hmm. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people. I made a video. It was basically how to use COLL without learning COLL, and I've been pretty bad at being involved in other newer things or just really, I guess, paying attention often. I've been really busy, so I just
There's so
make
much
things I
going
think
on.
about.
Like when
But
as an adult, you like for me, I started when I was 13 or
mhm.
14. So I had all the time in the world to dedicate to Rubik's Cube, but now I'm 23 and suddenly playing with a plastic toy and watching others play with a plastic toy doesn't hold the same amount of time in my life. Just coincidentally, I'm not sure why.
Yeah, I mean, I make the excuse that the small amount that YouTube hands over to me, it makes it worth it. Um, really, I'd be doing it either way, but that's
Oh no,
I'm
are
not
you
living
serious?
off YouTube.
I've worked full time as a coder and programmer for Ruby's cubing, and I also don't. And I've solved more. Like I used to literally practice 10 hours a day. That's how I got to sub 10 in
Hmm.
about a year. Is by practicing 10 hours a day. Not because I wanted to get faster, but because I was like, this is the best thing ever. I play with a toy. People are proud of how fast I am. I get better, and it's fun. This is the best thing ever. And since that day, I've never not done a Rubik's cube solve in a day.
Yeah, that's yeah. Well, like what I was saying with that video, a lot of people in the comment section were saying something like, "Oh, you're talking about RLL or ROLL." I don't remember what it was, but often the comments in the comment section of like, "Oh, you're meaning this," and I was like,
Kind
"Yes."
of.
Let me look it up.
But let me make
Yes.
sure. Yeah, it's for me. It's why I don't put my name on anything. Like if you look at
Mhm.
all the stuff I've invented, some one class error subsets, some methods, I don't put my name. Not because like I'm not proud of my name. It's just I think that naming stuff based off of like intuitively what it looks like is a better system. And I don't need credit for coming up with something that was probably invented 20 years ago by some guy in his basement playing with a Rubik's cube. In my opinion, names should tell the story of what it is. So like like we have flipped line one last layer. It's a subset of line where you have a 3x1 block that is
Mhm.
misoriented. and it comes up fairly often actually. And there are just it's actually a really great subset in terms of subsets. It's probably one of the best one class arrow subsets that isn't just tripod. And naming it flipped line makes it so obvious. Oh, it's a line on the last layer that's flipped over. And from that, if someone else comes up with the same idea, they don't need to try and take credit or feel that someone else is taking credit. We can just agree, oh, we're both doing flipped line. Because I worked on that with Ben 1996 123. I don't recall his first and last name because he doesn't use it very much, but he's a cuber. Do you remember Slidey Sim?
Oh, jeez. The name's ringing a bell.
It's that puzzle where you move the numbers around. I
Oh, yeah,
actually,
yeah, yeah. Like the
I
15 puzzle thing then, or?
yes. Do you remember the simulator that was on speed solving?
Oh,
That might have been that might have been before your time.
I feel like some things like visually I can see, but I've
So if you
might
link
just be
my
completely making it up.
sorry, if you link my YouTube channel, you'll see at the bottom. I used to be one of the best. I was ranked fourth in the world out of hundreds,
Hmm.
and what that puzzle did for me was it introduced me to speed solving different types of puzzles, which was completely new because the first time I'd ever speed solved anything, it was like a speed cube. I mean, I used to like make mazes as a child. I would sit down with a square paper and make a maze and try and
Hmm.
solve it as fast as I could and stuff like that. But it introduced me to systematizing speed on anything, and I think that's what makes speed cubing so cool. Is there's an objective linear measure of how good you are. There's no judges. There's no disagreements by refs. It's just pick up a Rubik's cube, put it down, it's solved. How fast did it take you? How fast
Yeah,
were you? And from that, I created a life philosophy of time is important because it's the one thing we can't take back. You could take back your words if the other person agrees that you didn't really mean that. You could take back stuff you give away. You can get something that you didn't actually earn, but your time, every moment that passes, is entirely permanent.
I like that. Have you? So I avoided clock forever. It just did not interest me.
I've never solved a 6x6.
I did it once at a competition. I barely made cutoff, and I don't know if I'm going to do it again because I was like, it just feels excessive for me. Like I
This
feel
is
like
this is a
four by
funny
four I
story.
like.
So I literally had never solved the 6x6, and I was hanging out with Keaton, Jonah Crosby, Brenda De La Cruz, some people from the Northeast, and they gave me
Mm.
a 6x6, and I tried to solve it without any help, and I got all the way to the edge, to the last like up to PLO. I had a ZBLO. I did the ZBLO. I DNF'd the solve because it turned out I had parity and I didn't see it. So the only 6x6 solve I've ever attempted, I DNF'd because of ZBLO.
I mean that's the only time I do COLL. But yeah, I there was it was I think it might have been earlier this week or last week I did a 4 by 4 solve and I usually don't DNF those, but I had a flipped edge and didn't realize it. But it just cuz I thought I would have I did OLL parity, but I didn't need to at all. I just completely blanked and went through that. But yeah, the clock I avoided it, but there's a new one by Chi that's has like 200 some magnets. It's all magnets and it feels really comfortable to
Oh, I
solve.
have the story for you. You know who invented magnets, right?
Well, invented magnets or
Of course,
invent
of course, of course. Who used magnets in Rubik's cubes?
Are you talking about Chris Tran or are you talking about
Of
someone like
course.
before that?
So
Okay.
Chris Strand is my best friend, like
Hmm.
literally. He's I talk with him every day. We had just met, and he was coming to work at the cubicle, and he had all these ideas for how to revitalize Rubik's cubes because he's a chemist. He's literally studied as a PhD level chemist. He never got his PhD, but he was close. And he was telling me all these ideas, and I'm like, what about finding a way to make it so it sticks? And the next day, he comes back with some cheap Shang Shao Rubik's cube with magnets in it, and I was the first person to try it. And I told him this is good. And from there, now everyone's got magnets in his cubes. All thanks to Chris Tran and his crazy ideas. That man is a mad scientist. And when I say a mad scientist, I mean the man is crazy, crazy good, but a wild man who has just so many ideas. And
Yeah, I just
the cube that I got my 7.46 still to this day, my PB average was only
mhm.
the third magnetized cube of literally thousands.
Was it a GTS then or what was it?
Yes, it was a GTS. It was a GTS. I think that would have been the GTS 2 before we went to with Ridges. So GTS M. No, no,
Okay.
no. It would have been a GTS M. Not would have been version 1, not 2.
Yeah, because version 1 was like the first thing that was the first puzzle I ever magnetized.
Yes, yeah. Oh man, that just
But yeah, I just grabbed this
fun.
because I just got a 3D printer. I've been loving this thing, and Chris posted like a gyroscope stand
Cube
for the
stand.
cube,
Oh God, Chris
and
is the
I
man.
immediately I was like, I've got to print this thing, so I
What
printed
is
it. Although
that?
green,
Oh, it's green. I was like, what
yeah,
is happening with your Rubik's cube? It's
I forgot the
disappearing.
green screen.
You just unveiled yourself. They all know now. They all know that it's not
No,
really.
this is real. This is completely real right
Yes,
here.
look at that. Don't you see him knocking over the puzzle?
Earlier today, I was teaching violin lessons and I hit my wall, and instead of this, I'll switch it real quick. Instead of this, I have where is it? Where's OBS at? Oh, it's literally right in front of me. So yeah, instead of this, I have this my background. And I like hit the wall, and someone thought I completely smacked the instrument. So I was
That's
like, no,
hilarious.
it's okay. So I was exposed with that as well.
You've been exposed twice. You might need to change your next time. Next time, come through non-green screen. Actually, do smack it, and then say, "Oh no, it's fine. It was just a green screen," and then have it tumble down.
I
It's the
have to do
perfect
this
prank.
now.
It's
This
the
officially
perfect
has to
prank.
happen.
It's the perfect prank because you're fooling them by not fooling them, by fooling them, by fooling them in the past. You're
Oh,
fooling
this
them by
is
not fooling them.
layers.
Just like a Rubik's cube.
The
Speaking of which,
yeah,
layers. I had wanted to ask you to just let me perform a 4-line poem because I make music. So I'm bipolar and I suffer through depression very often. And I wrote this poem when I was very depressed, and it goes like this. Because I'm talking about layers and the being at the bottom. You just made me think of it. Lonely, only of his own choice. Quiet, afraid of his own voice. Phony, betrayed by his past lies. Spited, delayed by his last tries. It goes on for much longer, but I think you get the gist of it just from that. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Well, as far as said with suffering with bipolar, has that affected you with learning the cube? Has the cube helped that, or how have you dealt
The
with that?
cube has been the greatest coping mechanism I could ever find. It is something where it's completely internal because I suffer from psychosis occasionally, which is a disconnection from reality. But what I know, if I have my Rubik's Cube and it looks solved, it's solved. And so I can sit there and play with it and know no matter how crazy, no matter how sad, no matter where my head is, this toy doesn't lie to me. And from that, it connects me to reality. So it helps me. It has hurt me in the past because I've been depressed and done nothing but solve Rubik's cubes, which has caused me to distract myself from my problems. But for the most part, it has been more of a help. And I know there are a lot of mentally ill cubers. I don't know which mental illness. Depression is rampant. A lot of us are like Max Park. I personally am Asperger's myself. Like Max Park, I have autism, though I'm much lower down on the spectrum. And it's something where nobody has to tell you what to do. If you know how to solve a Rubik's cube, you can solve it from any position based on any piece of information. Oh, look at this! I was just solving the cube. I get a one Laplace layer. Some magic.
What's up with the stickers?
Oh, this is a big surprise for me. I just switched my color scheme. I'm now using gray instead of red and black instead of orange
Like officially,
as my main on my mains. They're all going to be switched to this.
is do you have certain color blindness, or is it just
No, my
because?
well, it's partially just because I want to be unique. That's like my whole thing is I want to be special, but
Hmm.
also because when I'm doing ZBLL, red and orange can look very similar. And so I find myself thinking it's a different case. And so I figured, why not try a different scheme? So I took all the red stickers off my, I mean, took all the orange off my cube, and it was working. Having black opposite to red was working well. The only issue is my brain wasn't able to compute red opposite to black very quickly. So I figured, why not switch both? Because gray and black are both sort of like dichotomic colors between white. Like you
Hmm.
add some white to black, it becomes gray. And so I just switched my entire color scheme to green front, white top, gray, black, blue, yellow.
And the gray and white and black don't ever get confused in there.
No, because if you actually look at gray and black, they're very different.
Mm.
even though they can look similar, maybe compared to like orange,
Yeah.
they're very different on a scale of opposites, which is okay. This gets it pretty deep into the computer science of what I'm working on, but you can reduce the entire Rubik's cube down to three numbers by concatenating corner orientation with corner with edge orientation, because those numbers are completely uh, different from each other. You can concatenate edge permutation and corner permutation, which can both be reduced down to one integer, and you can concatenate all edge orientation parity and I'm sorry, corner orientation parity and edge orientation parity completely. And so I might have said something wrong there. I'm sure someone's going to call me out. Please do, because if you know what I'm talking about, I might just let you join an open source project I'm working on. But you can concatenate the entire Rubik's cube down to three integers, which is groundbreaking.
Hmm.
That hasn't been done before. Cube Explorer concatenates it down to four orientation and permutation integers, but going lower means without expanding the actual base of numbers that we need to keep track of, you can reduce the space down to three numbers, which means you reduced it by the equivalent of 25% down or 33% up. That is gigantic. I'm basically making, if I can actually do this, which is a huge project, Cube Explorer about 25% faster.
So Cube Explorer, I need to figure out how to get that working on my Mac. I had it once working, but I'm having trouble getting it working. Is there any newer version of that?
No, Cube Explorer is groundbreaking because it wasn't made by a cuber. It was made by someone else who just finds cubes interesting from a mathematical perspective.
Hmm.
Hubert, I can't remember how to say his name, Kosiemba. He's an
Yeah.
inventor of the Kosiemba method. Yes. And so it was designed for something else than what we use it for. So, and there are tons of solvers, but none work as well as Cube Explorer because I've actually looked at the code. It's done in Pascal. It is beautiful what this man did with the Rubik's Cube. And the fact that he didn't even understand it the way we understand Rubik's Cubes is even more impressive because he understood Rubik's Cubes from a whole new perspective, which, I mean, he did this back in like 2003 or something crazy when he first
Hmm.
had the project working. It's insane how much time he was able to put in decades ago into stuff that we're only now getting to today. But there isn't a new version. There are some analogs like I forget K-Cube. K-Cube works because it's written in C.
Hmm.
I think there is a K-Cube that's on JavaScript, so you can run it in your browser. It's going to be slow because ECMAScript isn't the fastest engine, but there are options that you should be able to get running on Mac if you do some research. Which I can, if you message me afterwards, I can send you some links
Yeah,
to help
thank
you
you.
out.
Does so Cosiamba, doesn't that, unless I'm confusing with something else, do something similar to like domino or half turn reduction where it orients everything?
It is essentially he invented that method.
Hmm.
It's essentially that he invented the method of reduce it down to orientation, solve all of orientation on one scale, and then you can solve the cube in a much smaller move space, which is all computers ever do is reduce the space of a problem down to something that they can just search through completely.
Okay. Yeah. That I mean that's what I'm trying to do that intuitively with fewest moves with FMC. And I feel like I'm halfway there. Some people have really gotten that down.
Did you see the reconstruction of the world record?
That okay, I am super excited with how the because it wasn't just I like accidentally stumbling upon a good solution. Like my best
No.
FMC is a 22, and it was an accidental ZZ last layer skip. I mean, I did winter variation, but people who know what they're doing, they're like, no, you would have just stumbled upon it anyway. But
Exactly.
yeah, and so not only was it a really amazing solve, but then it was taking, I think it was like an 18, and then
He reduced it using an algorithm he had memorized. That right there is my brethren. Alg Bros, stand up. I go by Fresh Algs. That's one of my nicknames.
mhm.
That Alg was the freshest thing I have ever seen in my life. To reduce the middle of a solution based purely on your own knowledge of the cube,
Mhm.
beautiful, truly, an artist.
Yeah, I was reading. For those who don't know, yeah, it was an 18 move solution. There's at one point I think there was like six moves that I read in some comment thread. Someone's like, well, "How did you see that?" He goes, "I don't know. It just looked weird to me." And he said something like that. And so he took the solved cube and then sort of just extracted those six moves. Realized he could solve them with four moves and then it canceled 2, or it was something like that. I think he had
What
a 20
he's
move
doing,
solution and then turned it into a 16.
what he's doing is literally how a computer solves a Rubik's cube. It
Hmm.
finds a state it has memorized before, but the only way it memorized it was by exploring the cube. And so, like, have you seen the AI solvers? Like, there's an AI that knows how to solve the Rubik's cube. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that. What is it? Have a name
Wow,
or?
I do not recall it. It was worked on by some people. I know Brandon Lin was involved
Hmm.
partially. They solved the Rubik's cube entirely with AI, like using neural networks. It typically uses like a Petrus-like reduction method, but occasionally it does something crazy where you cannot tell how it's solving it until like 5 moves left, and it's doing something completely new, which is it would be like if you gave a baby a Rubik's cube and just
Hmm.
and kept giving it solve Rubik's cubes until eventually it could solve any cube you gave it to it, but you never even told it how. That's what's so insane about it.
All I'm thinking is that's a scary baby. That's what my
Yes,
brain just went
and that's
to.
why it's a scary computer. The Rubik's it solved a four-dimensional object in
Hmm.
a 43 quintillion move space intuitively. If you know anything about AI, it's exciting what neural networks are doing these days because they are surprising us. Like they're doing things we didn't expect were possible, and
Yeah.
that's when we reach Skynet, people. So be afraid.
It's all from the Rubik's Cube. It all stems from
Oh,
there.
that's exactly at the moment at the end of the world. God hands you a Rubik's cube and says, "Solve this in 6 moves to prove you're not a human." So you better start memorizing. Could you imagine
That
if that's the
what's
movie? That's the end of the Terminator series. They hand Arnold Schwarzenegger a Rubik's
I
cube
would
and
be
say, "Solve
so
this."
happy.
Could you imagine every single Rubik's cube solver in the world would suddenly be like 200 times cooler?
Whenever I solve, I'm keep going back to FMC because that's sort of like my thing that I always instead of memorizing Algs, I like that as I mean, I need to. It's gonna start branching out, anyways. But whenever I do like an inverse solution or do back and forth, and then I solve it, and it just seems random, and then it's solved. It's such a cool feeling to see that happen.
It's the spice of life is to solve
Hmm.
something and then be surprised how it worked. It's like for me, so I have a lot of quote unquote problems. I have financial issues. I have unstable living situations because of my mental illness. My life has been difficult. But if you go backwards and see the journey here, it was beautiful. And from that, I take great joy and great pride that I climbed the mountain. And I am now in a position where I just get to enjoy life. And that is all life is just continuing to make progress so that even you forget how hard a path you had to walk to get to that position in life.
Yeah. What do you? So what's the future hold for you?
I am currently on medical leave because of my mental illness from college. I currently a student at Columbia University. I'm on track to return next year in the fall. I want to get a bachelor's in computer science. I've already finished my freshman year in computer science with a focus in computational linguistics and some history and language credits. And then after that, I'll either go and get my master's in human biology or move into the workforce. And after that, I want to get a doctorate in computer computational linguistics because Noam Chomsky is one of my heroes.
And then cubing. Did I hear that? Did you say something about getting back into the cubing world instead of
I'm
reintroducing?
already it's this is not my first time I've come back. I've come back from averaging like 12, 13 bad times all the way down to being getting PBs multiple times. I got PBs about a month and a half ago in 3x3. I got a 7.4 average of 100, a 6.8 average of 12 3x3. But what I'm doing now is I'm coming back to one-handed, which was always my main event,
Hmm.
and I'm hoping to get sub 10. And I'm a dedicated person, so we'll make it happen.
And OH, it seems that OH. I was reading an old thread that you're saying. I think you said something about ZBLL working almost better for OH than it does two-handed.
It does because you turn slower, so the amount of
Hmm.
moves you save by and are more significant. So if I save a look and I save a certain number of moves, the look is actually a smaller portion of my solve because OH solves are slower. Each and
Hmm.
it takes the same amount to see a case one-handed or two-handed. The look matters less, and the moves I save and the efficiency matters more. So it's twofold an advantage for one-handed to be able to learn more out. It's why, like Daniel Rosavine, the feet god.
Yeah.
He was actually one of my first quote unquote apprentices. Like he used to look up to me in the Northeast, and he learned just that like hundreds and hundreds of algs solely for feet because it's even more so. A look
Mhm.
doesn't matter as much because your solve takes as long, and saving moves on feet is huge because solves take like 20 seconds. So if you save 10 moves, that's groundbreaking. And it's why he's so good at feet. He's not the best turner in the world, but he's one of the most efficient alg users.
Yeah, I think I saw a reconstruction of something of one of his solves, and it seemed insane. Something he did, I forgot what it was. And there was someone, oh, who was it? I can't remember who it was, but they definitely do CFOP normally. And I watched a one-handed solve, and they're doing Rue for one-handed now, which it, I
That's
think,
groundbreaking, right? People are switching
yeah.
methods for OH. Rue is not the best method. ZB best method OH. Fight me. Fight me.
Well,
No,
I'm just
no.
saying, I feel
No,
like a
no,
year
no.
ago I would have been so amazed that people were switching methods, especially like a
But no,
route
I
for
believe
OH.
I believe Rue is actually the easier method. It's sort of the CFOP of Rue because
Hmm.
block building for a CFOP solver is not that difficult if you know how to do X crosses. You can do it pretty intuitively,
Hmm.
and all you need to do is to learn how to do M moves with your middle finger or your ring finger, and you can turn like it is middle. You can turn ridiculously fast. So you're doing two gen. It's a very good method, but I think ZB is competitive, and I'm still working on learning full ZBLS. I just never committed to OH the way I'm committing now.
What's ZBLS?
ZBLS is when you orient. So there's VHLS, which you might have heard of, which is when you have a three move insert and then you orient edges at the same time. ZBLS is the larger subset where you have any F12 cases your last slot and you also orient edges. It's like 100 and something, 200 algs, except you have to learn it from all four angles. So it's actually like 800 algs. It's actually more than, but a lot of them are mirrors and inverses, so you can do it intuitively. But it's just another subset to learn that's going to make it so that I'll just do a quick example.
Hmm. Okay.
So I have a solve. This is not a good scramble because I'm just doing an example. So I'll do this much of the solve. I'm not used to this color scheme yet, so I apologize for my bad look ahead. But here I have this case, but I'll mess it up just so it's not so obvious. So I have this F12 edge corner here. I have the edge up here. By instead of doing this to solve the pair, I can do something as simple as this: rotate, insert, and
Hmm.
now I have edges solved. And from here, I just have a ZBLS that I can solve easily.
Okay, so it's not even just orienting edges; it's solving edges.
It's not solving edges. It's orienting edges and doing F12 at the same time.
Okay.
Did I say ZBLS at the end there? I might have meant ZBLL.
Okay.
My speech becomes a little mixed up sometimes. I apologize for the noise in the background. I'm sitting on my deck by a busy street. I hope it's not too loud.
Oh no, it's fine. It's fine. I was trying to scare away my cat for a while. I'm glad my dogs haven't even started barking. It's a zoo. There was something. There was just a little bit more on a couple things that I thought about talking about. Where if someone wants to get into, I think like there, I've met quite a few people that their goal is to learn ZBLL. It's just so. What do you do first? Do you just learn
So
easy ones at random, different subsets?
the first thing to do is to fully master COL to the point where it's subconscious. Because this is not a dig, but Colin Burns doesn't learn algorithms. So until he really started communicating with like me and other people in the community, he didn't
Hmm.
learn. I mean, he didn't even know OLL, PLL, and he was like sub 10 or something crazy.
Yeah.
And he started learning COL, and I started to see like the master's journey. And you see a beginner, someone who it's so difficult because they're just starting out. And so what I would say is before you even start learning CBL, make sure your COLs are like recognition is instant because your recognition is about to get twice as hard because you're going to have to recognize corners and you're going to have to recognize edges all at the same time in the same step. So first master COL, make sure your COLs are comfortable. And the first thing to do to get into ZBL is start to recognize when you're going to get a COL PLL skip. So basically when you're going to get an EPLL skip. And once you get comfortable with that, learn 2GLL. 2GLL is the craziest subset. It is so fast because it's literally just a few extra moves that are 2 gen and you skip all of EPLL. So basically you're canceling into a U perm in the middle of your COL. It's it's insane. It's
And
one of the reasons I'm so good at OH is I get two GLLs. And like if you look at my first official sub 10, I got a fairly easy two GLL, but nothing special. And I got a 9.7 out of nowhere just because I got lucky on F2L and I got a really easy last layer case. And that's why I say always learn because you have an advantage over the person who said, I know enough. Because like Drew Bats, he only uses OLL PLO. He's world class, but if he learned Algs, he would just be faster because
Yeah.
he would have an advantage over anyone who doesn't. And learning Algs is a cheat code to Rubik's Cube solving. You get to skip steps.
So
That seems like a good closer.
so okay, I kind of want to not ask any other questions then.
No, no, please go on. I went on a little diatribe. That's all I was
No,
saying.
that's good. So first one, the 2GLL, is that instead of me trying to guess and remember what it was, what is 2GLL?
2GLL is when you have a CP skip. So when you orient edges, you have all of the corners already in the correct position relative to each other, and you just need to do COLL plus a U-perm, or you just need to do OLL and PLL, but you don't have to reorient anything because edges, once they're oriented, can be permuted 2-gen with like RU, like a U-perm, which you can do 2-gen,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can do the corners 2-gen because all COLLs that are that are solved CP can be solved with soon combos, meaning you're reducing the subset down to soon combos. You don't use soon combos because there are better Algs for most of the cases, but it's the equivalent of reducing the cube down to soon combos.
Okay. And then, so if someone was just to learn COLL, I was told by, I'm not gonna name drop, but someone who's quite proficient at speed solving to not do COLL for two-handed at least because it'll be slower than OLL and PLL.
Only at the start. People who do not use COLL are bad at COLL. And that's not an insult or a dig. It just means you suck, bro. Get on my level. And by which I mean practice the method. It's not fast. It's going to be slower at the beginning because you're
Hmm.
getting new. Just like when you first learned OLL, you were slower with your OLL than your two look methods. But
Hmm.
eventually, with enough practice, your recognition gets fast, your algorithms get fast, and you get EPLLs. And 1 in 12 times instead of one in like how often is a PLL skip? I forget. It's been years.
172, I
Yes,
think.
exactly. So you multiply your PLL skips by 6. That's a big deal. That
Hmm.
alone means COLL is worth it. If you learn to recognize your skips, basically you multiply your AUF skips by 4. So we're doing math now with the Rubik's Cube. And remember, it's all binary. Oh, I do have a speech I want to close on. So any other questions?
That was actually going to be it. I was going to ask where people should go to see more stuff about you or check
um
things out. So I'll kind of
so
let you just sort of close all this out.
So the place to find me would be YouTube, Jabari Nuruddin. I'm sure he'll link it in the description. I'm on Twitter as Poe the Poor Poet, SoundCloud as Barry the Binary, Instagram as Terry B Tertiary, Facebook I have a profile, but you can just add me. I'll message you. I love to chat with people. And as a closing speech, I'd like to tell a little bit of a poem that's more of a philosophical idea. The entire universe can be expressed in binary. It is not a spectrum. If it's a spectrum, it can be represented by a transcendental number. But if you understand transcendental numbers, you realize they don't exist in reality. If the universe is binary, there is a single switch somewhere that will make you infinitely happy. You will forever find success. Search for that switch. And I'll say this, I believe I found it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a wonderful opportunity, and I really love talking to you, Sean. You seem like a great guy. I hope we can talk in the future.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect
Are
timing.
you kidding? Could there be a better moment? That is the ending. That is the ending to our little show. We talked for an hour. Wow. And your dog finally barks.